Look at all these beautiful people. This is really we've managed something special here today. Hi there, it's Matthew Blades, and this is another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. And I mean, we can work around the horn because I think we've been there, done that before. The only person who it's their first time, at least on this podcast, is Kaylee. And we're going to let her kind of make her own introduction in just a minute. But Jill McMahon, Teresa Porter, Rob Boyle, these are all folks who are involved with the Grief Relief Retreat and who have been on this podcast numerous times. But who is this newbie down here in the left? Kaylee?
I think that's what my title says. I don't know. That name just kind of came in. I'm so excited to be here. I get to wear many hats. I've been connected with Rob with Rite of Passage Equine Therapy for the last 4 years. I got to meet Teresa actually a year ago, but really get to work with her over the summer. And then I got to be a participant at the very first Grief Relief Retreat. So I get to talk about all kinds of things today, I think.
Cool. Well, the reason we're here is because January 14th from 10 to 6, we have our second retreat coming up. And so that's on the way, friend. I don't know if that shocked you a little bit, but that is on the way here in just a few weeks. And so we encourage people to go and get signed up. Teresa, we do have a little bit of an incentive, an early bird. And then, of course, if you sign 2 people up, there's an extra incentive there. We'll continually send people to serenyoga.com, which is where you'll find all the details for the Grief Relief Retreat. So, Teresa, I'm going to start with you on the podcast today. After we got our introduction from Kaylee, I want to ask you, how are you feeling post-retreat? Now that we've had a few weeks to sort of settle in, think about what we did. How are you feeling about this retreat and where we're headed with it?
Well, how I'm feeling from the first one is how seamlessly it came together. All of us as practitioners, I don't think it was really on any of our radars to host this retreat. And I feel like it was forces significant than ourselves that kind of brought us together to hold the space for people to heal from losing a loved one. I know we all have had our own journeys of processing grief from losing a loved one. I feel like it came really well together. And one of the feedback that we got is, how many years have you been hosting these retreats for? And most of the attendees were surprised that this was our first one. So again, that just goes to show that it just came together for a reason. And then hearing the feedback from people who attended it, I just think we're in the right spot, right? Creating space, 8 hours for people to go through 4 different experiences to process grief in a non-traditional way, as Jill would say, that it feels really good. So I'm excited to start off the new year. Again, people going into the new year kind of reflect on what things they want to change, what they want to let go of. So I feel like 1 in January is a great place to start that process with this retreat.
Okay, Jill, I'm coming to you in just a second, but first I'm going to the cowboy down at the bottom right. Rob, you led us in a really beautiful ceremony, the equine therapy that we did during the retreat. There wasn't a single person that attended the retreat that didn't make a comment about the equine therapy piece of it. You had a moment there in the middle of trying to help heal all these people where you got a little bit of healing yourself. And I'm going to ask you, Rob, to tell us about that moment where you started to feel those tears bubbling up as you were talking about grief and your mother, and walk us through what was happening in that moment, because I don't think anybody here would argue with you. That was a pretty powerful thing for you to go through in front of all of us.
Pretty organic and happened in the spur of a moment, it seemed like. But yeah, so I'm the type of person, being military background and a male ego and all that kind of stuff, that kind of keeps stuff in, that that's not really hurting me or anything like that, such as the loss of loved ones and stuff like that. I don't get hurt. It's just a cycle of life and everything. I understand all that. And so years ago when my dad died, I didn't get emotional. I knew it was coming. And then we were at the wake and I hadn't got emotional. I hadn't felt that much anything yet. And then just coincidentally, his sister, which is the last of his siblings, she walked in, and it was like, it was a trigger to emotional outlet for me. And so now we moved to my mom, and that happened this last January. Her birthday was on the 10th, and she died about a week or so later. And it was really the same thing. I'm kind of the caretaker of the family, so I I hold my emotions in check for everybody else except for me. And I don't know, there was some moment within the equine therapy part where we were having discussions about all this, and boy, it triggered something. And I think it was the part there where I wish she could have been here at the retreat, or at least at this facility. And she never got to see the ranch. She never got to see the horses, the few horses that I do and everything. So there was, that was a trigger for me. And that sparked a lot of emotion inside. And it happened seemingly at the right moment for everybody else as well. And I'm so grateful for that, because yeah, I'm the type that holds things in, and it came out, and it was a grief relief retreat, and it was a big relief for me. And so it was just so lovingly done, and it felt great. It felt
Yeah.
really good.
Jill, as somebody who's been in the grief space for 20 plus years, and I don't know if everybody on the screen knows it, but this woman here, nationally known. I mean, they're all over the country. People are reaching out for what does she have inside this brain of hers, right? And so, from that perspective, from the outside looking in, how did you feel about the retreat? And now, remember when you answer that you helped put it together, so be nice.
And I'm not biased at all.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Right.
It was beautiful. And I will say that I echo some of the responses that we got from the participants. It didn't feel like it was a first for any of us. And I think that has a lot to do with our cohesiveness, and that we all bring something different to the table. So, I am so used to, like you said, I have years of experience in grief and trauma, and going to certain retreats and going to certain workshops, and you guys, you aren't in that world, but they're all formulated the same. It's like the same, Happy Meal. You're going to get your burger, you're going to get your fries, and you're going to get your little toy at the end. And this is just such a mashup of so many different modalities and intentions, and to have the equine mixed with the somatic body expression, mixed with journaling, mixed with the river ceremony. I mean, it really is, that's what makes the retreat what it is. It doesn't fit in any one box. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Kaylee, we have to ask you as one of the participants, but I mean, you're also in this space. Like, you're also someone who helps people on the daily. Was it hard for you to set your counselor hat down and be a participant?
Oh, that's funny you ask. How much time do I have?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
all day.
I mean, Rob said it really well. In my own family life and in the sphere of healing others, I have that caretaker hat. Now, wherever I show up 100% authentically, but it's my responsibility to take good care of myself. And so when I step into a space, the loss that I was really processing was my 27-year-old brother's death the year before. So November, it was right at that year mark, around the holiday mark. Man, it was just a whole lot. I had to watch my parents go through the grief of losing my brother. So as the oldest child, as this is my brother and not my kid, I set a lot of stuff aside. And when I got to the relief retreat, I knew I was held really well, because everybody knew that was something I was going to struggle with. And so you all were very intentional about, Keely, like, this is about you today. You show up however you need. And it was wonderful permission, because I didn't have to be anything but myself. I could cry, I could smile, I could laugh, I could avoid, I could embrace, I could do whatever I needed to do. And I really appreciated that. Like, I could fully show up as myself and experience all the beauty that is.
So our next one, as I said, is coming up January 14th, and it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. And the typical protocol for anybody wondering if this is for you is that, we're going to get everyone together. We're going to have a quick little Q&A about who are you? Why are you here? We're going to tell you some stories based on our life. And then Teresa leads everybody through some movement and some breath work. And you know what's great about this, and I wonder if I have the picture, and I would love to pull it up, is like this is a grief relief retreat. But look at this. Look at that.
Yes.
We're laughing our asses off in this grief relief retreat. And this is like the very beginning of the retreat, right? Where we're just in breath work and we're in movement. Why did you include that partner work in there? Because it was a huge piece. And this is one of my favorite photos that illustrates what's going on. Hand in hand, there we were together. But what is the benefit of holding hands while we go through this?
So there's a lot that goes into partner work and group poses, and it depends on who I'm working with. So for this particular environment, the intention I was setting is for us to get to know the other people within the retreat. But what happens when you're doing partner work, specifically what poses we were doing, was you have to make eye contact with them, you have to communicate with them, and you have to trust them. So we were doing chair pose, like you're sitting back in a chair, but you were leaning on the other person, right? And you were doing other poses where you're helping them stretch. So it's like all about kind of checking in with their rhythm, where they're at, where their comfortability is. And that just kind of is like an icebreaker, but it also bubbles up things like, am I communicating where I feel safe? Am I trusting this person? So there's a lot that goes into it depending on who I'm working with, but the partner work specifically brings up a lot for people, but also it's an icebreaker. It gets people talking, they're having fun. I just like to have fun with it.
Right. The part that and verbally I expressed this to all of you, that I knew I was going to struggle with was all the journaling, all the writing. It's just not a strong suit of mine. But I had to be honest, I really fell in love with that piece because I thought that it kind of forced people into being really thoughtful about what was going on up here and then like what was going on in their heart. And so Jill, I'm going to ask you this question, which is, what is so powerful about writing some of this stuff out as we're going through it and cycling through these emotions?
I love that you just owned that you're not a journaler, that it doesn't work for you. And, you know, as the person that gives that homework assignment myself, I'm not a journaler either, Matthew, so I get it. But I will say there is something that is very important about expelling what is bubbling up inside. You know, that arm wrestling that's been like, I got it. No, I don't. No, I really got this. No, you really don't, dude. I mean, that's constantly going on, and not everybody is verbal. Now, Mr. Blades, I know you well, and I know that you are verbal, right? You're a verbal, you don't, I'm sure it's not always easy, but you can express verbally. And for some people, that just feels so foreign and so vulnerable and so scary. So journaling is a great way to just expel what's bubbling up inside. You know, I have a great mentor, and he always says, you need to draw it, write it, or say it. Pick which any one of those three will work. If you can't say it, then I'm going to ask you to write it. If you can't write it, then I'm going to ask you to draw it. But either way, you just need to release it.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about, Teresa, as you hear her say that? Because you released a little bit that day too, right? And subsequently in the moments that followed, you know, we did a little sneak preview day. And two, I mean, you, like, guys, you don't know this, and I hope you don't mind that I share this, Teresa, but I mean, she got super emotional in that sneak preview. Her mom and dad were there. Her father, like, I think was a critical piece to this whole thing. And man, something magical happened between the two of you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you hugged your father that day differently than you have in 30 years.
Yeah. Try to make me cry, Matthew.
No, not at all. But if you do, I think that'll bring people in. Go for it.
That day was, well, first of all, I was not feeling the best, but I knew we needed to show up, and I did. And I just set the intention. Again, we kind of go, we don't script things at all, right, Matthew? So it's like just following the lead, and whatever comes up, comes up. And so when it was my time to share, I shared my story of, you know, losing my brother in a motorcycle accident when I was 7 years old. But it wasn't until April where I started to really unpack that and how it created certain behaviors and operating systems in my life and how it was impacting the people around me. So as I was impacting that with Rob and Kaylee, I worked with them, what it did for me. And I was sharing this process with my parents along the way, which was another thing of being open as I was going through these emotions, right? It's like I was angry. I was angry that I didn't get therapy at first, because look at me 37 years and how this has impacted me. What if they got therapy for me back in junior high or high school? Where would I be now? But then I also had to look at it from their perspective and put myself in their shoes. I have 3 daughters. What if I were to lose one of them? Where would I be? So they were in survival mode, right? They were doing the best that they could with what they had. At the same time, my parents almost lost their house. I've been through that in my married life. We lost everything in 2008. So that in itself was crazy stressful. I couldn't imagine dealing with that on top of losing a child. So, but the fact that I was able to communicate that to them as I was going through this was huge for me, because I had kept stuff in and not communicating how I felt. And then on the sneak preview, when we showed up and my dad and my mom were there, I got up and I shared my story in 30 plus people I didn't know. I broke down and I was crying and watching my dad, and he was super teary-eyed, and he doesn't open up a lot. He shared stuff I've never heard him share before. And my daughter was there, so she got to experience it all. My youngest daughter. It was a beautiful thing. It was my daughter who brought me into this community to begin with because of her healing. But I went up and I just gave him the biggest hug, and it was like an embrace I haven't felt for a very long time. So I texted them later and I said, I want more of those hugs more often. But I just texted him too and told him how much that meant to me for him to communicate in the way he did and to share the way he did.
Well, and I asked you to share that story for a very specific reason, which is we go through this retreat that we've designed for people is meant to kind of force you into this space where you deal with things a little bit and you face some of the stuff that you've been pushing to the side for whatever reason. They weren't ready, you weren't ready, whatever. And we kind of force you into a place, and not in a bad way, but where you kind of have to think about it and deal with it. And then the direct result of you dealing with it was that embrace that you got from your dad. And I think, you almost made me cry a few seconds ago. And the piece that you said that may surprise you is that your daughter was there to witness it. That is such a powerful thing for her to see her mom and her grandpa after all this time still finding a way to come together in a really beautiful and meaning way. And it gives her permission to do the same thing with her kids once upon a time if she finds herself in that place. Do you agree with that, Jill?
It's breaking the cycle. You're right there, Matthew. Teresa, I didn't get to witness it. So now I'm so upset that I was out of state for that. But it was, I don't even know if you realize how widespread that was. You just broke the cycle and modeled for your daughter forgiveness and love and bond.
Yeah.
Awesome.
In that moment when my dad was talking, he shared a little bit how challenging it was, of course, but to hear him talk in depth of how he was trying to pick up the pieces for my mom, and he was trying to be there for himself, and he was at a breaking point where he said, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know how to be there for my kids. I don't know how to be there for my wife. I'm losing my business. Like, I'm about to lose my house. And he just said a prayer, and his prayer was answered. Like, my dad doesn't share stuff like that very often. And so for him to say that in 30 plus people he didn't know, and like he was talking to me though, I felt like him just watching me. We were looking at each other. It was so like, again, I realized they're doing the best that they could at the time. Like, I just so much more gratitude for where he is now and what he's walked through. It was such a healing moment for me.
Yeah. So Kaylee, I'm tempted to come to you really quick and just
Please.
did you experience some of that post-retreat yourself? Was there anything that you picked up that day or something that you shared that day that allowed you to become closer to the people that had been difficult? Because we talked about this in the retreat, and I think I have the photo here, not the exact moment, but this was Jill and I were talking, and we were kind of leading this conversation, and we were saying, like, when somebody dies in your family, oftentimes the family just kind of dismantles. Like it goes one of two ways. People get real close, or people don't know how to deal with anything. And so they just kind of separate and they become distant with each other. Was there something that happened on that first retreat that allowed you to become closer to the people that also experienced that loss, Kaylee?
Yes, but in unique ways. And
Okay.
to go back to what Teresa was sharing, so I asked her dad after sharing, I said, what was it like to see your daughter do all of this and share all of this? And he said something to the effect of, it is so good to see what she's been talking about for so long. And for me, before coming to the retreat, I had a lot of fear. If I fully face up, what's going to come up and what kind of state am I going to be in? And how is that then going to impact my family, my ability to work, my own mindset? And what I found was like the total opposite. Like it actually put me in a more soothed and settled place that, you know, I already had immense compassion for how each individual member of my family has responded to my brother's death and grief. Like, you know, I can see how each of us in our own ways created distance to tend to ourselves and our needs. But I think the relationship that was more restored was the relationship with myself. You know, I had abandoned some of my own needs so that I could do all the functioning and do all the things, because we know the kind of grief culture we live in the United States. It's the 3 days or here's the platitudes. Like, it's not okay to not be okay. And, you know, it was so valuable to me to be in this whole circle of people where I could show up exactly as I was and be embraced. And I think too, like the partner work, it meant something special. Jill got to be my partner in that. And it one was like a fun time to be with others, but it was a different kind of being held in the space. Like you could help me stretch and tend to parts of my body that I can't do alone. And it's such a metaphor for life. Like there's parts of our grief we can't touch without a community that knows the language. And so the retreat was that for me, where all the different modalities as Jill's talking about, which there's so much science behind it, y'all. Like I could talk for days about that. Let me know if you want me to, but every single piece of it is like science-backed and holistic healing and ancient forms of healing that each piece gave me more of myself and my ability to connect with the community of people around me. I was really grateful. I'm even going to hang out and have lunch with some of the women that we came together with, and I would have never met those women. And we know that we can go to this lunch and be like, yeah, so the holidays were like really, really hard. Like I walked in Hallmark and I lost it, and they know exactly what that's like. They understand what it's like when you're surrounded by beauty and comfort and you're like, but there's a part of me that doesn't feel very beautiful and feels very broken. So I'm beyond grateful.
Yeah, to me, the thing that screams out about this group that's on the screen and leading this retreat is simply that all of us have been there and experienced it and gone through it ourselves, which gives us a different lens on this whole thing. And Rob, I'm going to ask you a question. You'll probably resonate with this, but it's certainly true of veterans. I have yet to meet a veteran who's good at letting the outside people in. He'll sit down with a fellow Army buddy or a Marine buddy or a Navy buddy or Air Force buddy. He'll sit down all day with those people and tell them everything in the world. But when it comes to anybody outside the box, it's just like, you weren't there. You didn't wear the uniform. You didn't do the thing. You don't know. And I think if we've learned anything in this retreat, it's that, well, hold on a second. Actually, we do know, and it's different for everybody, but there's a lot of similarities too. And so Rob, as the guy who, is a former military vet, and even you said it up front, like, you got the male ego going for you, you got the military thing going for you. How in the hell are you able to get this horse who doesn't want to be around anybody to walk up and start kissing your hand like that? That takes a certain level of something. So help us understand what's going on. Is this beautiful? I mean, look at this. Look at that. Adar is just giving you big kisses. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. She's so interesting and everything. And she's exactly like a lot of my military brothers and sisters that I've over 25 years I was in the service. And you said it in the beginning is that there's so many dynamics going on first off, we got the male ego, and then we've got the, how boys grow up. You get knocked down, and what does the coach say? What does your dad say? Brush yourself off, quit crying, get up and start and go again. And so we get groomed with that all our whole lives and stuff. And then the military comes along, and you got to put on this face, or this, it's a survival thing. It's a confidence thing. And so you're even more groomed to not let weakness show, I guess is what it is. And it's not weakness, it is on the outside, people looking in and stuff, or that's how we take it, as weakness, but it's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with weakness. It gets to where you're told so many times to not let your emotions out and park that stuff and don't let it out, that you actually believe all of that. And that's really a bald-faced lie. And for centuries, it's the same thing's been happening to, not only men, but women too. And so that military background for me, it made me a lot stronger in a lot of different ways. It made me more resilient and resourceful, being around people. But at the same time, like you said, why do soldiers not want to share with anybody else except for soldiers? But I would also say that's the same thing with police officers, with firefighters, with different other type of occupations where, you just don't let the cat out of the bag unless you're around, really close friends or close family. And so I really think it's a societal thing where we've been told not to let things out when all along we know that's not healthy, and especially as after time and everything, especially after I got out of the military and I found stuff locked up inside, and you compartmentalize things and you lock that box up and you kind of hide the key so you can't find it. But I really learned that the only way, and I learned this not necessarily as much for me, but talking to fellow soldiers, talking to women and a lot of other different people, that as soon as you start trying to find that key again and get that box unlocked, that's when everything starts coming out. And it has to, because if it doesn't, it's like an exploding bomb inside the box. It's going to come out, and then there's going to be leaks like in a dam. And this leak is going to go out, and it's going to somatically, or in other words, a layman's term, is going to physically affect your body in some other way, whether it be gut issues, whether it be heart problems, whether it be blood pressure, whether it be this or that. And so I really learned that you have to get the key for the box. You got to unlock that box and open it a little bit of time and get things out. And so I took that learning experiences over the years and able to talk to friends and fellow soldiers and fellow human beings, and them not expecting me to be able to talk like that or be able to expose myself like that. It gave them permission to do the same thing. And I think that's the bridge, or that's the breaking the ice part. And that's when I found out, oh my God, horses there's no difference other than their horses were humans, but they go through similar things as we do in life, whether it be trauma, whether it be accidents, whether it be abuse, whether it be this or that. And I just found myself over a few years helping a lot of women and a lot of soldiers, focusing on the horse and talking about it in regards to their trauma and what do you think that they're feeling, and let's talk about their box that's locked inside and their coping mechanisms, and let's see if we can do that. What would you do to help them unlock that box? And it just, again, it worked like a dam. And that's where I ended up and everything. I said a long answer, but
Oh, it's great. Well, and you
Different
used a
things in
word
it.
in there that I want to actually let Jill and Kaylee talk a little bit about, which is that idea of permission. And that to me is the benefit of the retreat. The retreat is literally, this is where you come to let it go. This is where you come, and it is amazing. You can ugly cry, you can cute cry, you can sob, you can, like, this is the place. This is where you can come to let all of that stuff out. And so you can both bat it around, but how powerful is that word permission?
I'll hop in really quick. And then Kaylee, I would love to hear you speak about the horses, since you spend so much time and so much of your skill is with the horses and how they give permission. I would say, yeah, you can wail and you can snot cry. And I want you to give yourself permission when you sign up for a day like this. But if you don't cry, that's okay too, because you're being brave enough and vulnerable enough to walk into an environment that each one of us knows makes you a little nervous. And I think that isn't that what's so special about the retreat and that day? Like, we hold that space for you.
Yeah.
And the person that you're sitting next to, they feel the same way, and they're holding some of your stuff and you're holding some of their stuff. And it's messy in a beautiful way. Like, you get to release with people that know what it feels like to hold it tight for so long, to hold it together for everybody else. I love the January retreat. I love that idea. In my line of work, I've come to know that November and December are really trying for people for lots of different reasons, right? It could be the anniversary of the death of their loved one. I worked with somebody yesterday and today, brother and sister, who both lost their father to suicide a year ago this weekend, right? And they both live out of state, and they came back into state to be with mom. They came back into state to go visit the resting place, which is not in a cemetery, of their father. And guess what? One of them was at a holiday work party on Thursday. I mean, talk about feeling out of body and out of place. He knew the next morning he was hopping on a plane to go back to his hometown to be with family, and taken right back to the trauma that he moved away from. And so then he has to smile under the Christmas tree in a couple of days, right? November and December can be very tricky for people. But what I've also come to know is that January is renew and rebirth. And people, in the most beautiful way, recommit to themselves at the beginning of each year. It's a new, every day is a new opportunity. But it's January signifies for so many people, like, I'm sick of taking care of everybody else. It is time to take care of me. And we are there to help you do that. Like, let us introduce you into self-care in the safest possible way.
Haley,
Yeah.
let's
And
talk
everybody
about permission.
here.
Yeah, keep going.
Yes. Well, everybody here's so good at that. Like, Jill, you talked about the nerves, which is real. I've been on site. I know I've met all of you, but I still had some nerves. And you guys were so good at dispelling that. Like, you guys are kind and funny, and you can be serious and honest, and you open up the space that you're right, that in grief, the world keeps turning. Like, the mail piles up and the bills need paid and the gatherings still happen and all the things. But ultimately, there's the grief, and there's your loved one, and there's the loss of the place that they took. And the retreat that you've offered, it's an actual relief from having to set it all aside and put on the face. No, you get to show up and actually tend to the grief for all the parts of self that occurred. I wanted to bounce off what Rob was sharing. So Rob is the Texas veteran, and I've known him for many years. But I don't think I got to share with him my experience of getting to watch him tend to the feelings that came up inside. Like, as a woman and as a friend and as a sister, I didn't feel like I needed to carry. I didn't see him in any less of a masculine or manly light. I had the witnessing of someone that I love dearly. Rob, I love you. Go deep within and say, yeah, it's really hard that she doesn't get to see this, because how beautiful all of this is, and the horses in this retreat and all of us healing. And I felt it, and it gave me permission that if I had a moment like that, it didn't have to be some big thing. No, I could express myself, be met with love, and continue in the journey of the day. So thank you for your willingness to do that. And each one of you did that in different ways, from your humor to sharing your story. I felt really held and encouraged with equine therapy. So I could definitely touch on that. So Adara is the horse that we used. Adara had been familiar with. We had worked with her for quite some time. You know, her story and background, some of it we don't know, but she had bounced around, been unwanted, experienced some challenges. And even though she was around some loving people in her last homes, she needed a special kind of care. So very much like us with our grief, just a special TLC was needed. I was very familiar with her, but in the session, in the setting with the people, it unlocked some things for me. And I called my friend after. I was like, some things came up and I had a choice. You know, I think that's sometimes a fear going into a retreat experience like this, or a therapy experience, that once I go in, then everything changes forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any control over what happens. But in reality, I had total choice, right? What came up for me, I can choose to act on that or not. I could choose to pretend like it doesn't exist. I could choose to take it baby steps and, you know, like, what about Bob? Take one foot and see like what happens. And the horses do a fabulous job with that. You know, like, I can connect with Adara on just in a live kind of way. Like, I'm not the same species, but I know what it's like to be unwanted. I know what it's like to bounce around. I know what it's like to want connection, but then to be scared of it. So I understood her. And with all the things that came up in the session, it furthered my healing process in a way that wouldn't have been possible. On top of, she gets to heal through the journey too, because Rob works with her in the session. And that's like, Rob is the therapist helping her heal, and it's inspiring and it brings hope, because sometimes you're like, man, is Adara ever going to get an opportunity to step up to the horseman's hand and feel safe? Like, will that ever happen? And then you watch it slowly happen. And then it makes me think, okay, yeah, my grief, although right now is really heavy, it'll be with me. And I choose to be in relationship with it the ways that I want to. But it won't always be like this huge wave that's crashing me. And I was really grateful for all of it.
Me too. Totally blown away by the equine therapy. It was my first exposure with it. And I think I even said to the group after we were watching, there was so many times, so many moments where Adara just turned her back to Rob. And here's this loving guy who just, you know, I mean, look at this sexy cowboy. Look at this guy. People are like, Kevin Costner's in your, I was like, no, his name is Rob Boyle. It's not Kevin Costner. But you know, you were so kind and such a generous heart, and all you wanted to do was help her. And to me, it was such a metaphor for life on how many times we have these amazing people show up in our lives and they just want to be there for us and help us. And we kind of put our ass to them and we say, yeah, I'll get there when I feel like it, right? I'll do that on my own time. And it's a real missed opportunity to connect with somebody and to allow some space for healing. I just want to encourage you. January 14th is our next retreat from 10 in the morning until 6. It's going to have every element that we've just talked about. We've talked about the yoga work. Here's kind of what it's set up like in the back. A little thumbs up from Teresa as we're getting ready. And then, so, we go through the yoga, we have all of the poses, and then we move to some journaling. And then, Rob got into the equine session and he led the horse out. And then, of course, we've all seen the work that he did with Adara. And then, Jill and I led a nice journaling session, and we encouraged people to write down some things that they wanted to keep holding on to and some things that they were ready to let go of. And that took place in this river ceremony where we went down. And I was so impressed by you, Kaylee. You're the one in the white there, because boy, did you just jump right in the water and get after it. I was like, this girl is the real deal. I love it.
Oh, it felt so good. I was like, the river. And the Verde River is usually freezing, like so cold, but it was warm. And I don't there, you know, we all commented on the different things that were going on. Nature's one of our greatest teachers. And so to be
Yes.
able to be out there, it's a different kind of therapeutic experience. Like
Mhm.
whoever is considering coming, this is different than the therapy you've experienced if you have experienced therapy. This is so different and so needed and taps into the places within our soul that need the
Mhm.
love. I wish I could have swam, but I was like, crap, I wore white. Like that's a bad idea. I should have picked a different color, or I probably would have sat down and swam.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. And then we head back to the house. We have a nice little dinner, and then Rob gets this beautiful little campfire going, and we all just kind of sit around the campfire, sharing stories, talking to each other. And as Jill likes to say, it's a nice closing ceremony for everybody as we prepare to, kind of send you off into the world, because there's a lot of anxiety around that piece of it. I think for tons of us. I know for me specifically, when I went to my retreat, it was like, okay, it's going to be awesome while I'm here, but then I got to jump back into the big bad world as soon as this is done. And all those things that were there before are going to be waiting for me again. But here's the thing. And Teresa, I'll kind of lean on you for the answer to this question. We give up new tools. You have new tools in your toolbox now to deal with things as you move forward and head back into your regular life, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Jill did a good job at leading, and you, Matthew, closed him out and giving him some tools, but we also sent out a whole email full of resources of, sound healing to therapists in their area that specialize around grief, Eric's house, like emotional release work, emotional release techniques. So we sent out a whole email of resources that they could use. And then we had a follow-up Zoom call a week later just to check in with them. And that's what I think is unique about this too, is we have a pre-Zoom call, so we get to know each other, we get to meet each other, so that you're not walking into total strangers, right? You get to meet before and verbalize a little bit why you're coming to this retreat, like an icebreaker. And then you have the retreat, and then a week after, we have the follow-up Zoom call of like, okay, what came up for you? Or are you struggling? What went well for you? And that was such great feedback for us, right, as practitioners, of what this retreat did for them, as they showed up for themselves that they haven't in like 6 months to a year. They started letting go of bad habits, showing up for self-care practices, loving on themselves more. I mean, I could list a whole bunch of stuff that they said, but that just made me so happy that we are able together create this space of healing that allowed people to show up and reconnect with themselves in a way that they haven't in a long time.
Isn't that the truth? And I can tell you, as a guy who, had that come to Jesus himself a couple of years ago. I mean, you were talking about it earlier, Rob, and I pulled up this photo just to show everybody, but you were saying, listen, you keep this stuff inside long enough and it's going to manifest itself physically. And you had mentioned off all these conditions, but one of the things you left out, and hang on, ladies, I'm getting ready to show you one hot photo. One of the ways that it can absolutely manifest itself is shingles.
Oh, brutal.
Yikes.
Oh,
Brutal, right? And that was
Ouch.
my story. And I mean, when I got shingles on my face,
Oh.
it was like the universe was saying in the loudest voice they possibly could, go get some help, bruh. This isn't working anymore, dude. Like you need to pour into yourself. And I think I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I know that these things aren't cheap, and it's not something that a lot of people look to and they're like, I got to just do this. I'm encouraging you to jump into your savings account and save your life. And I don't say that lightly. Like most of us have a little bit of like, just in case money hanging out over here. And I just encourage people to reach into that pile and invest in yourself, because what will happen on the other side is this enormous amount of freedom, where now not only do you have a different perspective, as Kaylee said, you've met some people, now you have a community, now you have tools, you've gone through some things, and as I like to say, you've maybe let a little air out of the tires. You've watched a beautiful horse show you how kissing somebody again, metaphorically speaking, is possible. Like there is so many incredible pieces to this retreat that we've all come together to have a hand in, that I just want to encourage you. If you've been listening to us now for 40 minutes and you're like, you know what? I need to do this. I'm here to tell you do. And if
Mhm.
you've landed in this spot and you're still with us at this stage of the game, like this is for you and you should sign up right now. We'll have a link in the show
Mhm.
notes for everybody to do so, but just don't even wait. Just don't even wait. Sign up a friend, come together with a buddy. It's so powerful to have an accountability person when you go through something like this, so you can both kind of, you know, wash off of each other, or what's the word I'm looking for, bounce off of each other a little bit and kind of help each other get through this whole thing. And Kaylee, I wonder for you, when you left the retreat, you mentioned that now you have this little community and you got people that you're talking to. When you guys get together, don't you feel like you have this really interesting bond now because of that unique experience?
Oh yeah, you pick up right where you left off, which it isn't just surface level connection that
Mhm.
happens in this kind of experience, because
Mhm.
your soul's bared and you are like, you see that you're a part of everybody that's here. So you pick up right where you left off, and then you can go anywhere at this point. We've already gone to the depths. So now we can go to the heights. We can go all the places.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such a great point. Rob, we're going to come to a close here. I'm going to give everybody a minute or so to kind of speak their final piece. But Rob, I would encourage you to speak to those veterans that community that you're such a big part of.
Yeah.
And what can you say to these vets who, you know, a lot of them have experienced enormous grief, not just maybe in their own personal lives, but maybe they lost a buddy, you know, when they were overseas or in the war or something like that, or maybe that person has died by suicide, you know, because they couldn't handle what they experienced when they were overseas. What could you say to that group of people that would encourage them to attend our next grief relief retreat on January
Oh, wow.
14th?
Yes, you just hit it on the nail. But I think the biggest problem in health and psychology and all that is the invite. It's how do you say it? What do you say? How do you express it? What does the invite look like? And it's, to be honest with you, it's going to look different to every single person out there that's watching this right now. So for the we talk about, and when we talk about the equine therapy, there's communication, which is probably the most important thing. And then communication develops into a relationship. A relationship over time develops into trust. And then once you have trust, then you can delve into things that are going on inside like that. And so for those soldiers, the Marines, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard, and all the other different special forces and stuff like that. To you guys out there, um, it's always been a lie that we can't help each other and that you have to hold this stuff in. So that's the first thing, is let that go. Don't let all the things that we've been told over the years hold you back. And the most important thing is that this is for you. This is for each and every one of you that is having some difficulty and everything. And equally important, it's for your loved ones. It's for your parents that have a hard time understanding. It's for your siblings that can't grasp what you went through and the difficulties they have. It's for your children. It's for your spouse, your significant others, your best friends, your coworkers. And so I challenge you to reach out. Even if you don't sign up for this grief relief, reach out to one of us and let's have a talk. You can come out to my place and we'll talk around the horses and stuff like that. If you need help, I'm here to help you. And because I've learned through my experiences that you can't lock it up inside all your life, because it leads to, again, a myriad of things: alcoholism, drugs, somatic symptoms, and stuff like that. So I just ask you to give one of us a call. Give me a call if you're military and stuff like. You don't want to talk to anybody else, talk to me. I've been there, done that, been in your boots, and we've got something to share. And so that's the first step. And I'm asking, and first responders are the same way, exact same way. They go the same thing that military people go through. And so reach out to me. I've done all that. and I'm here to help you. And there's horses out here that we can laugh, cry, and talk about and find out what is the end fight for them. So that's
Love
about it.
All right, I'm coming to Teresa and Jill in a minute. Kaylee, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to be real pointed with each and every one of you. And so I'm going to say, Kaylee, you're talking to other health professionals, to other counselors, to other therapists, to other people that are in your field, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you're really good at helping other people. But when it comes to helping yourself, there's often a little bit of a bump there that yeah, right. You're not maybe as great with it. So I want you to speak to other people that are in the field who are helping other people on the daily with their grief. What did they need to hear to come and manage their own grief?
That you are just as valuable as all the people you help. Like,
Yeah.
people that are in the healing field see and value other people just where they are. They love with their whole heart. So why are you excluded from the list? And why would you not allow an opportunity to do something as beautiful as this? Like, yes, you may want to run the space and like be the therapist of the things, but Jill will put you in your place and say, this is for you. And it's going to be wonderful. So this space is the same as for the veteran and first responder community, trauma therapists alike, the healing professionals. You have a place here too, because all humans need oxygen. So all humans that experience grief need TLC and love and support. And so what better way to do it with the loving faces on the screen? Mm-hmm. And if you're like 99% there and you're like, I don't know how to blah, blah. Talk to someone in your life, someone close to you, and go, I'm really thinking about doing this. I want to do it and I see the value. They'll ask you what your hang up is. You'll say it and they'll probably say, screw the hang up, go. Because that's what happened to me. And I had a really good friend fund my way too. So like, ask. You don't have to be the martyr and not ask for the support that you need, or someone to be your accountability person and say, show up for you. So I would encourage you to show up for yourself, because you're not going to regret it. If anything, you're going to be connected to a loving community. You're going to heal, experience nature, be around horses, laugh and smile and tend to your body. Like, what's the downside? I don't see one. Right, so
okay.
Go.
Matthew, just close it right now. Let's just close it right now. That was great. I'm kidding. Kaylee.
It was really perfect. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. Teresa, you're going to get the final word in a second. I'm coming to you, Jill, because you're also in that space. You're somebody who helps other people all the time. And so you have a kind of an interesting lens into this world. And so again, what do you say to people who are getting hung up on any kind of thing and they don't want to go, yeah, I really need to do this for myself?
I say to them that Kaylee and I are you, that we may have letters behind our names, but we are human and we understand, and we fall into the same trap that you do or have in the past. And we've been in the same place that you are. And I am telling you, now is the time to make yourself a priority. Why are you going to wait another year or another month? Why? And as Rob was alluding to earlier, the more you pour into yourself, the more people get of you. So if you have kids, if you have a spouse, if you have a co-owner of a business that you run together, they're getting the outer shell of you that you are allowing them to see. But why don't you look inward and pour into yourself so that more can get more of you? What a gift to everybody.
Amen to that. And I go finally to my friend Teresa. You and I have known each other for almost a dozen years, and finally we've come together to do something really magical. And so, why are we doing this?
I have so much I can say to what everyone just shared, and my heart is racing, so I feel like I have to share what's on my heart. Processing the grief that I didn't unpack for 37 years. I feel like me doing that actually saved my marriage and saved my relationship with my kids. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't see how me not processing my grief was affecting the relationships around me. I was so afraid of deep emotional connection because I couldn't process that depth of loss again. Whew. So, doing the equine therapy and processing my grief and the work I did with Kaylee and me saying yes to finally unpacking this, even though it was scary as hell. And I had to break apart my whole foundation that I built my life upon, was life-giving. And I'm now showing up in a different way. My relationship is better, deeper, and I don't live from a fear. I mean, it was affecting me on all levels. Like my kids going off and doing stuff, a level of anxiety because I was waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. And it affected my communication. I mean, I could go on, but as scary as it is to face it, I knew I had to. And that's what my past since April has been. And so this is an opportunity to start that process and to show up in a bigger and better way for your loved ones and for yourself. So that, you know, wherever you're at in the grieving process, even if it's almost 40 years like mine, it's worth doing the work. I live with the first responder. I know what they go through. I live with it. And it does show up in a somatic, visceral level. I've seen it with my husband. So I have such a big heart for first responders and love and appreciation for them that they need this work more than ever. They go through it silently until recently. My husband has lost people to suicide. He's seen it and he's deals with it. And so the work that you do with vets and first responders is, again, life-giving. So I'm so grateful for the work that you do with them.
Our retreat's coming up on January 14th. It's from 10 in the morning until 6. We just encourage everybody that's been listening here today to please just take a minute and go over. You're gonna go to the website. You're gonna see something that looks like that. SIRRINE yoga.com. Outstanding. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for your time. Kaylee, thank you. Rob, you. Teresa, of course. Jill, of course. We just love having everybody here. And we really hope that everybody will show up January 14th from 10 to 6 to have a little bit of relief from your grief with our grief relief retreat. Have a great day, everybody.